I like to make money in dollars and spend it in pesos or Thai baht. You don't actually have to be a millionaire to live like a millionaire. Save up 10 grand, move to San Miguel, move to Chiang Mai, spend 2 years and give yourself a go at running 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 internet businesses. Most of them probably will fail, but you know what? I reckon you'll hit one that'll work in 2 years. So that's a good strategy.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it. From beautiful San Miguel de Allende, smack in the middle of Mexico, with your hosts, Jonathan Lockwood and James Guzman.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders. This is the podcast where we talk about getting past all of the stuff it takes you to go beyond your borders, whether they are psychological, whether they are international. And my name is Jonathan Lockwood, here with James Guzman.
How's it going, Jonathan?
Going pretty good. I had a great weekend in Querétaro. I continue to love this town.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great option to just jump over there, half an hour. And
it is.
Yeah, lots of good stuff to do there.
We're looking at, it's like a population of about 2 million. And it's got a lot of the cool stuff that San Miguel is. It's not as quaint, really, but there's a lot of stuff there. And, I went there. I got to go to the Costco, of course, and get my American consumerist, stuff out and paid like 4,600 pesos full of stuff, packed my car full, brought it back.
Did you go to Antea, the big mall there?
No, we decided not to do that. I did that last time, and that was fine. But no, this time we went to a lot of little places. There's a place called Logan's Beer House, which seems like an American or European style place. It is the best selection of beer that I've seen in any place in Mexico yet. That was really nice.
Nice. I'm sure you like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if a lot of people don't know this city, Querétaro, it's very close to San Miguel de Allende. It is just growing like crazy. They have a mall there that's one of the biggest in Latin America, and it's impressive to see a place that's actually growing, and that a middle class is actually emerging rather than being decimated.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. And so it's great. There's an airport there. That's the airport I've always flown into and out of, which makes it convenient. It's, the airport, you can get to Querétaro in, 40, 45 minutes. The airport's a little bit further on the other side of town, but great city. So I'm glad it's there as an option.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have as our guest today, Barnaby Andersun. And we met Barnaby. Barnaby is here in the studio with us in San Miguel. He's been living in San Miguel for something like 7 or 8 weeks now. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So Barnaby, we're going to call him a brand strategist, speaker, and writer. Now, starting in IT in 1993, his career took off when he joined Australia's first major web design and development team in 95. Being involved in all aspects of web technology since their very conception has made Barnaby a true pioneer in web development, e-commerce, digital branding, and online marketing. So you can see his skill set is a little beyond a one-line answer here. He's been a consultant, web designer, information architect, graphic designer, animator, international speaker, writer, project manager, trainer, branding strategist, and trademark expert. He loves to help people break free from their jobs. We like to hear that. And also to move their business online, automate e-commerce systems, and create online traffic to get more sales. Sounds good. A core focus is his successful branding agency, Brand Aloud, which has a radical new approach to branding focused on research. Using a proprietary step-by-step system that surveys target markets to see what they want in a brand. The Brand Aloud motto is, let your target market tell us what your brand should be. After all, they're the ones who'll be buying. And Barnaby, welcome to the Borderless Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to be here. And thanks, James.
Yeah, no problem.
And we hear from your accent that you're not from the United States nor from Mexico. Where are you from?
I'm from a country on the other side of the planet, deep under, down under, in fact.
Very good. What part of Australia?
Sydney. I was born in Sydney.
Very good.
Yeah, and grew up in the Blue Mountains, which is a beautiful little area about an hour or two out of the city.
And so you got rolling. Things started getting rolling for you in the early to mid 90s, and you were involved in IT.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I was at university, and I just felt like I was hanging out with a bunch of people that didn't know what they wanted to do with their life. Mm-hmm. And so I kept on cutting back my time, full-time, part-time. And eventually I was like, I know what I want to do. I want to be an entrepreneur. Why am I doing this? And I'd already started doing some work for a software developer. And this is before the internet. And so I just saw my future lay with computers, because back when I started doing that in 93, I I realized that this little laptop, I could foresee a time when I could use that and live anywhere on the planet. I mean, I don't know why I was really seeing that, because there was no internet. At that time, my boss was using CompuServe. And I think I was thinking, hang on, maybe there's some relationship here. Maybe there's something that can be done. But that's why I really wanted to, because I guess I was really seeking freedom. And so that's what got, and so I quit university, and then I started, I moved to Brisbane. So I moved from Sydney to Brisbane, and I started reading in these magazines that were saying, World Wide Web is starting, get on the internet. And I'm seriously thinking, what is the internet? I remember calling up my friends and saying, isn't that a strange thing to think about a question like, what is the internet? But back then I didn't know what it was. I even remember when my boss got me to read a book on what a database was. I didn't even know what a database was. So these are funny concepts because they're just so obvious now. But back in the early 90s, I was like, I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. And now your life is based around it.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess, and to be honest, even now, like when I find a new technology, my first reaction is fear, actually. And so anybody who's listening who's like, whoa, I don't know how to do it. Even though I've been working in tech for 22 years or whatever, it's scary when you find a new technology that you don't understand and to embrace it. And so, but I always just threw myself into it and figured it out. And so, but the story's pretty funny if you want to hear it. That first night of when I started working with the web, I read this magazine, the World Wide Web, and I was like, what is this? I looked at the back and there was a little ad, web design firm. I'm like, what's a web design firm? And I rang them up and I said, and I'm working in a sales department selling computers at that time. And they said, well, come on tonight, we're giving a presentation. And so I went over there, saw their presentation, still didn't understand what they were talking about.
What year is this,
Barnaby? This is in February of 95.
Okay.
And I still didn't understand what they were talking about. And so they said, come back to our house tonight. Now, they all had long hair and they looked a bit strange and they smelled a bit strange, these guys. But their audience was packed with all these business people. And I was like, this is a bit weird. And so I went back to their house and we walked in and I was peering through all the smoke. And they used to live in teepees, this crowd. And there they were puffing away. Okay. And they had these computer screens. And then they showed me, they wrote something on this screen. And they said, watch this. And they pressed a few buttons, this guy, Tony. And he said, look, it's now online. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, anybody in the world can see this. I said, you just type something and then anybody can. And he said, then watch me. And he put a photo up there. And the screen was grey. And we were using a system called Netscape 0.93B. This is beta. There wasn't even a version 1 yet. And I was like, and then he gave me a little floppy disk, and he said, go home, and if you can learn this code, this thing called HTML, I'll give you a job. Well, they completely imploded in about 6 months, even though they had the major news people coming around every week and interviewing them. They were a bunch of hippies who didn't understand business, and they just collapsed, even though they had so much success, because they were basically one of the first major web design firms. So I was out, but by then I already had clients and I knew what I was doing. So I started my own company that same year.
Okay. Now, at what point, do you remember a point when you decided, I don't want a job, I don't want to go to university the rest of my life, like some of these friends. You wanted to be an entrepreneur. Can you remember what went into that thought in that time?
Well, it really was born out of necessity. Basically, my wife got pregnant. And so this is in... it's in the same year, 95. So everything happened in 95. That year was pivotal. That was when I discovered the internet and when my then wife got pregnant. And it became pretty clear. I was like, hang on, I was very naive. I didn't understand what it meant to get married. I didn't understand what it meant to have a child. I probably didn't even understand what it meant to have a business. But all that happened was I had all this stuff and I was like, wow, my time is just gone. And all I'm looking at is the possibility of working for other people for 40, 50 hours a week and looking forward to a couple of weeks of holidays? Excuse me? No, thank you. So I was thinking, what's the only thing I could think of that would change that trajectory was making my own money and calling my own shots. I couldn't think that seemed to be the only answer. And so then my daughter came out and it was, that's a lot of work to raise a kid. And so my time was really, so then I just started working for myself. And even though that was obviously more risky, and obviously the income was very up and down, and sometimes it was great and sometimes it wasn't good. And to be honest, that really didn't suit my wife.
Yeah, but at that time, I'm sure there was some sort of influences or something like. I'm sure you just these ideas didn't pop out of nowhere. Was there anything that you were reading or somebody you were listening to that kind of inspired?
Funnily enough, it was really just that I saw those hippie guys doing such a bad job and getting all these clients, right. And my freedom was being compromised because of all. And I was like, well, I'm sure I could do a better job. So at that point, I didn't have any mentors and I hadn't found any books. It was 2 years after that I discovered Robert Kiyosaki. So to be honest, I was just flying blind. I didn't know what I just was, getting clients because everybody needed a website basically. And even though it was like people didn't even know what it was, they were sort of signing up. And so I made enough. And but I also started doing some contracting and things like that. So it was juggling. But really, it was in 98, 99. That's when I first read Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant. That's when I really I was like, oh, hang on. Even this whole thing of working for yourself, even that's a trap.
Right.
I'm just expending hours for dollars. This is crazy. There's got to be a thing called scalability and leverage. When I started to understand those concepts, that's when things really started to turn around. And that, and also I started meeting people for the first time that were basically creating income streams offshore. So in that same year that I came across the Kiyosaki book, I met people who were setting up international business corporations. They were doing offshore investments. And again, I just jumped at that. And to be honest, I lost a truckload of money. And it wasn't good, but basically I was really keen to get into that space. I was like, wow, there's a way that you can live internationally, and have passive income coming in. And so that again, just changed my whole thinking around what was possible. So it was actually this whole plan, which I didn't actually implement until, January of 2013. So 2 years ago. So you just go back to 93 when I first thought about a laptop that you could work anywhere until January 2013. So that's 20 years that I basically was essentially raising my daughter and living in Australia, living in the same town. So I was creating a base and a skill set that would enable me to be free, but I wasn't actually every year, sure, I was doing traveling. I was going to Asia and the US and things, but I didn't actually have that freedom that I now have. And so when my daughter basically finished high school and when she went to college, when she went traveling herself overseas, I was like, yes. But I planned that actively for the 2 years prior to that. So I had a 3-story house and all this kind of, the whole thing, I even had staff. I had like 12 staff. And so I had this big structure. I had all those things, there was a wife, there was 12 staff, there was a daughter, there was a 3-story place, there was leases, there was, debts, the whole thing. It was all there. And so I had to really work my way through all that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are in that position. Obviously they listen to podcasts like this, they read blogs, and they would like to do things like that. They would like to go visit other places. They'd like to have another business, but they feel kind of stuck. And a lot of times they're legitimate reasons. Like with your daughter or things like that.
Totally.
How did that feel for you? And then finally, when it was done, how did that feel for you once you knew that you were able to realize these kind of dreams that you had for a while?
Yeah, well, I guess even that was a process. So to be honest, it really started changing for me. Me and my wife separated in 2008, and my company was still growing at that time. But that was not a happy relationship. That was why that broke down. Right. So then I became a single dad. So it was me who was raising my daughter at that point. She wanted to live with me, and that worked out well. But I wasn't gonna leave her. So regardless of how much I wanted to be free and how much I knew that this was possible, by that time I had more and more friends working online, living in Thailand, traveling the world. I was seeing them do this,
right?
And I was like, okay, so to be honest, I was sort of counting down. I was like, okay, so she's got like 3 more years of school to go, and I was already training her up. Like she was already flying between, she would come and fly to Thailand and go to India by herself and meet people. And so I was training my daughter up to be very, very independent. She was, working a couple of jobs at school, making money. She was a very, very independent person and very confident.
What's she doing now, Barnaby?
Last year she started doing a law degree, but she realized that she was hanging out with a bunch of soon-to-be lawyers, and she didn't like them. And so
sounds like my daughter.
So she basically worked. Actually, a couple of months ago, she said this really funny thing. She said, "You know what, Dad? All that time that you were telling me that you could be free and do whatever you wanted. I mean, it must be nice to just wake up and have whatever life you want, because I really bought into the story that they told me at school, that to get the high grades, to get into the top degree that you could find, and then your life would be set." She said, "I bought into that, and you know what? I can see it's not making me happy." So she quit doing law. She shifted to actually doing social work. So that's an interesting shift.
Yeah, that's a big shift for sure.
Yeah. So so just that whole process led me to ultimately making a plan of having my 3-story home And again, to be honest, I had a really amazing girlfriend at the time, and she said to me, Barnaby, you've got this plan. You want to travel the world. Basically, that means you have to get rid of all your stuff, and you've got nice stuff. And so how are you going to do this? And so I said, wow. And so we just kept on downsizing from a 3-story place to a 2-story down to a 1-story. And then at the end, so I did that for 2 years, actively. This was a big process, getting rid of stuff. And I also wrapped up my businesses. So I did whatever it took. Basically, I was like, you know what, no matter what, whatever this takes, I'm going to do. So your point about people who are in situations where they're stuck and it's not easy, I really feel for them. And I'm not saying to people, you should do this. But I had a point of view that was my freedom was the priority, and I'm still going to take care of those who depend on me. But once that job is done, then I'll do whatever's required to basically create that, which means if that means getting rid of everything, if that means closing everything up, if that means being very unconventional, if that means losing most of my friends, so be it. And that's a tall order. And so that's not for the faint-hearted, basically.
So now that you've gotten rid of all these possessions that you've had in this 3-story house, I mean, have you missed it, or have you enjoyed it now? Once you got rid of it, was that a relief?
No, I was relieved, totally. Yeah. No, it was amazing because, I remember I cut everything down to 2 bags. Mm-hmm. And but even that process has taken, I've been now traveling the world for 2 years, like living in Asia and Europe and the US and whatever. But that was a process to really refine everything. I think when I left, I had 3 bags. So I refined it down to 2. But no, I haven't missed cars or houses because now actually I get to, I use Uber for cars or taxis. Mm-hmm. I use Airbnb for houses. So I just now rent beautiful apartments in whatever city I want for way cheaper. So basically, my whatever my typical costs of living in the one city in Australia, I'm saving at least 70%. So by traveling the world and living in really nice places, I'm able to travel the world, and this is going to sound pretty crazy, but I can kind of go almost anywhere and have a great standard of life for about $30,000 a year, and that is traveling. If I want to stay in a really really nice place, like let's say in Thailand or let's say in Mexico, I could do that between $5,000 and $10,000. So as opposed to if I'm living in Australia, that's going to cost me about $60,000 to $70,000, and it'll be about the same for the US. So talking about $60,000 to $70,000 for living in one place in Australia or the US versus traveling the world for $30,000, or living in one really nice, cool place for like maybe $5,000, $7,000 or $10,000.
Right. What was your path, Barnaby? Where did you when you left Australia to start this bouncing for the last couple of years or year and a half or so, something like that?
It started 2 years ago.
Okay. So where did you go?
So obviously I was living in Brisbane. So I moved from Sydney to Brisbane in 95, lived in Brisbane until 2012. So that's like 18 years in Brisbane, raising my daughter. So basically then got rid of everything and moved to Sydney for 2 months, back down to Sydney at Christmas of 2012. And then from there went to Bali. So 18 years in Brisbane, 2 months in Sydney, moved to Bali in this beautiful town called Ubud, lived there for 2 months. Then went to Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand, an amazing place. That's where most of my IT friends were. People, it's like a little Silicon Valley.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I had a lot of, there's a lot of internet marketers there, a lot of people working online. So moved there. I was only going to go there for 3 months, but ended up living there for 6 months and loved it. Really just beautiful place and so cheap. I could tell you some things about the cost. Like ultimately I found brand new apartments that are there, which you can rent for $1,500 for a year. A studio, brand new apartment with a gym downstairs and a pool around the corner from the major metropolitan area. Wow. Next door to the national park. That's just one example. So, and then you can go and have fantastic meals for about $2 to $3. And so you do the costs on that on average. And so, and remember, every taxi costs you 70 cents wherever you want to go, wherever you want to go in town. So Chiang Mai is a really interesting place to live. So I lived there for 6 months. Then went back to Bali for about a month and a half because that's really cool. And that was 2013. So 2013. I went back to Christmas, Australia in Christmas, and then went back to Chiang Mai for 3 months because I love that place. This is 2014, the last year. And after living in Chiang Mai again for 3 months, I went back at Christmas time to see my family in Australia. Then after being in Chiang Mai for 3 months, I went back again for my sister's wedding. So I had 2 family weddings, one at Christmas time and one in March. And then after that, we flew to Germany, to Berlin, actually to Frankfurt for a couple of weeks, and then to Berlin for a couple of months. So I lived in Berlin for a couple. Oh man, that's so cool as well. because Berlin is actually pretty much the cheapest major city in Europe. And I'm actually a vegetarian, and so I've got a few apps that I use. And funnily enough, Berlin is actually the vegetarian capital of Europe. So it's one of the cheapest places with all this amazing vegetarian food, and obviously a huge art scene. And anyway, it's really cool.
Tim Ferriss speaks very highly of Berlin too.
Exactly. So it's part, to be honest, these places I'm going, they're kind of on the trail of us sort of digital nomads, or whatever you want to call us. So Ubud in Bali, Chiang Mai in Thailand, Berlin in Germany, and then went to Amsterdam for a few weeks, and then went to Canada for about 2 or 3 months.
Where?
In Ontario, around Toronto, not just but around that area.
Beautiful town.
Yeah. And so, I mean, basically, what was happening there? So at that point, now, over that whole period, up until that point, I'd had a very large internet project that was paying a very good sum of money, but the funding ran out. So do you want to hear about this? Because this is how I have to change gears sometimes.
Okay.
So what I've discovered is that there's different ways to live actually now. So while I typically use Airbnb or renting an apartment, what happens if my income, because I run my own business, and sometimes the money isn't always flowing, but sometimes it does really well. At that precise point, I was seeing I was having to change business models, and it wasn't going quite as well as I thought it was. And so I was like, okay, so whatever money I have, I need to be extremely careful with. So I'm going to pull back on everything, even paying rent. And so there are some really interesting websites that enable you to live places completely free, as in like everything is free. Your whole life, 100% free. That means all the food that you want to eat, all the drinks, all the everything. And all you have to do is do a few hours of work every day in the garden.
Oh.
Interesting. So then when I was living in Canada, so after having this wonderful time in Europe, got to Canada, I was like, okay, I kind of need to watch the pennies now, just until I get things rebooted. So sites like Workaway, HelpX, Willing Workers on Organic Farms, there's a bunch of these actually. But Workaway is the one I was using. And that was really cool.
Also house sitting is another
house sitting
similar thing.
And couch surfing. The difference with these is that couch surfing you can typically use for a few days. House sitting, you kind of need to have a good reviews, and but the workaways you can use for days, weeks, or months, and so that was really interesting. So basically, doing that for a few months in Canada, and then once things started, basically they turned around again. I moved to I moved down to New York, and lived in New York for a few months, and again, New York is a town of money, and I really got things cranking there,
right?
And but my journey to San Miguel really started in Bali, where people first started telling me, go to Chiang Mai and go to San Miguel. And when I was in New York, they were reaffirming that. So this journey around the world is, after New York, I came to Mexico and came to San Miguel.
Bienvenido.
Yeah. So how have you been finding San Miguel so far?
Yeah.
Looks like you've been having a good time.
Yeah, I love it. It's really amazing. It reminds me of those other there's elements of this sort of this very great lifestyle, very, cheap and, great quality. I guess these are the things I kind of look for, good quality internet, great quality food, interesting people, and great weather. So you kind of get this really good mix happening. And so that's what I'm looking for. And I found that here too.
Yeah. And so have a lot of others. This is, from what we understand, the highest percentage of expats, and I don't know whether that includes just Americans or Canadians or also Europeans or whatever living here, than any other city in Mexico.
Yeah, for sure. It's got about 10%, I hear.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So this is great. Now, Barnaby Andersun is our guest today on the Borderless podcast, brand strategist, speaker, and writer. He's been living here for a little while. What we're going to find out about is what his plans are for the future next, but we thought we'd take a little time to give attention to our sponsor. Today's Borderless podcast is brought to you by the Condescending Group, your online leader in promoting moral superiority. Today, the Condescending Group would like to have a conversation with you about the best uses of your money. Now, don't get them wrong. They advocate freedom of choice in all matters that they care about. But really, can you justify paying for that flat-screen TV when there are starving, uneducated children throughout the world? They don't think so. It's not that they want to tell you how to spend your own money. It's just that they want to tell you how to spend your own money. So the Condescending Group reminds you to make contributions to them instead. It's true that they don't do anything to feed starving children either, but the fact that they provide thousands of articles, YouTube videos, and events where people talk about starving children, and where many people can be heard shaming others over starving children, should make it obvious that your money is well spent. Combine that with the condescending get-togethers in which people are all at once posturing themselves morally, criticizing productive people, erupting into spontaneous beat poetry and yoga poses, not to mention drinking the latest trendy wine and talking at length about shitty art. Well, is it any wonder why unmotivated, unproductive people worldwide are choosing to put off spending daddy's money on that big screen and instead send their contributions to the one, the only, the condescending group. They care more than you. So again, we're talking with Barnaby Andersun, brand strategist, speaker, and writer on the Borderless podcast. Very interesting guy that James Guzman and I ran into here in San Miguel. He's been making his life like, if you're listening to this podcast, probably exactly you want to. He's bopping around the world. He's living in interesting places. He's meeting interesting people, and he's working all the way. Now, let's talk about what your plans are for the future, Barnaby. Do you know where you want to land, or do you want to land? Do you want to keep this up?
Oh, there's definitely no landing.
Okay.
I've done the landing bit. So when you've lived in a place for like 18 years and you've had houses and cars, and I know exactly what all that's like. So done that. So I think this is a funny concept because people typically ask me this. We're going to get into some sort of weird territory here because there is actually no set plan. I'm very clear on my intention and I'm very clear on where I'm going. Very, very clear. But the route there is a complete mystery. So the route is actually not important because how I live now, again, may sound a bit odd, and I'm not, again, recommending this to everybody. It's just like, and I get most people this would not suit them, but it works for me. I just listen. And look for the signals. And so when you live like that, there's actually no plan.
Well, that's good. I mean, this is what it seems to me. I don't know, James, I want your comment on this. It seems like a lot of us think that sounds very good, but after a period of time, we do tend to want to land somewhere. Now, this doesn't mean we don't want to continue to travel, maybe spend large chunks of time in other parts of the world. But I know for me, it makes it a little bit hard with the studio here for me to, and I do have a mobile studio, it makes it a little bit hard to constantly be moving. And for me, that's where I've ended up at this point, is I want a place. And then this is my central position, but not for you. So that's intriguing.
Well, hang on, I'm not opposed to that.
No, I know you're not.
No,
We're
so
talking about what's right for you.
Yeah, but what I mean, I'm not even opposed to that for me. So again, there is no agenda there. So because I'm just listening and paying attention, it could mean that I might end up living in San Miguel or someplace for goodness knows how many years.
Right.
But I'm not looking for that necessarily. Gotcha. So it's like I'm truly flexible. So like I've just met James recently, and it's very exciting. And what you guys are doing is really great. And that's what I enjoy. I enjoy this opportunity of meeting such people and opening up new opportunities and just seeing where things go. I think I probably for so long I felt so stuck in one place that I always dreamed of essentially like an open book. That was really what I wanted, just like where there was no predefined length of time. I wanted to be able to just go for however long I wanted, for wherever, basically. And that's what I've created now. So I guess that doesn't really suit most people because people do want to create a home. And it's just that I actually do feel very comfortable now with whatever room I'm in. It just seems like I'm instantly at home. Yeah. I actually I feel at home here. And
you know what you're talking about with this, like kind of feeling stuck or something like that. I find that if I feel that way, that if I take a trip somewhere, then, I mean, especially, it's a little different. I don't know if people realize, if you've kind of fully embraced this, online internet meeting people type of thing, like me, I'll go on any website and meet anybody. I'm on all the dating apps. I'm on couch surfing. I'm on whatever, Workaway, the rest of it. I will plan to go somewhere. I'll reach out to as many people as possible and meet as many people as possible. I don't care. And it always turns out to be just really great and really interesting. And I've not had too many experiences that I would label bad. I mean, maybe some certainly less exciting than others, but sometimes it just turns into a really incredible experience. You meet some very interesting people. So, I find that if you kind of feel stuck or something like that, just take a week vacation somewhere and just, somewhere new and meet people. And it always kind of jumpstarts me.
Totally. I think people could take a few leaves out of our book. I mean, they don't have to do the whole enchilada. Mm-hmm. They could just they could keep living in whatever city they are with their family, but maybe they could just test out what it's like to live in Thailand or in San Miguel for a month, 4 weeks or 2 months. Just see what it's like and then go back home and maybe incorporate that sort of thing into their life. Like maybe once a year they go away for a little while. Or even, I mean, most of my friends actually, that when they seem to actually relocate, like what you've done here, and they like to build relationships and have a business and all of that. And so, and just in basically a foreign land that's a bit more exotic. And so there's so many ways you can do this. I've even got friends who are a family, Australian family with 3 kids that moved from Australia because they realized that each kid was going to cost them like $100,000 a year or something. It was going to be so expensive that they moved over to Chiang Mai. And each child had their own nanny, and they were just they had an amazing time.
You said earlier, Barnaby, that you listen.
Yeah.
You listen, and it strikes me that is something that a person with a sort of a spiritual centering might say. And I wonder, what has been your past as it relates to spirituality? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a very atheistic family, basically. So there was no concept really of spirituality. So by the time I was 20, I considered myself an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. But I started hearing about people going away and doing these meditation retreats, and they just grabbed my attention. I was like really drawn to that, but I had no idea why. In fact, I thought it was very odd. I would say to myself, why on earth do I want to do this? There were these 10-day silent Vipassana retreats that had a Buddhist origin, but they weren't Buddhist. You didn't have to be a Buddhist. You could just go there and learn to meditate. Anyway, I basically signed up for one as soon as I could, as soon as I heard about it. But even walking there, I was like, why on earth am I doing this? It just seemed really weird to me. Yeah. And, but yeah, I went and did it, and they were very, very difficult, but they really shifted my whole life. They really changed my perspective on things. And so you're asking my spiritual journey. So I've done that for more than 20 years. Lots of retreats, gone to India and lived in, one of the reasons probably I really love living in Thailand is there's a lot of that there as well. So, but again, I noticed in the last 3 or 4 years that I'd actually become stuck in that area. Mm. So what actually felt like a way to become free, and I guess freedom has really been my pursuit. So all along, so freedom of possessions, freedom of travel, freedom of money, freedom to basically be able to do whatever I wanted to do, but also freedom in my mind. I don't want to be limited by any kind of thinking. I don't want to have, if I'm thinking something can't be done, I'm not interested in that. If I'm feeling down these things I know that the mind can be completely changed because I've seen this in myself. So I was able to re-engineer my whole thinking around basically everything, and meditation's played a huge role in that. But I did start noticing that I was getting stuck in that department. And I also noticed that I had a lot of conceit, that I had the best method. Mm-hmm. And why don't you come and do my meditation? And what's your trip? And you know what? That isn't as good as mine. And just this whole, and when I started seeing that, I was like, you know what? This isn't good. And so I really set about demolishing that.
I understand. I really understand. Any of these things, yeah. Many, maybe even most of these things are helpful. But they slide off into this world where all of a sudden it becomes something that you never intended. And I totally identify with that. So, Barnaby, what are you doing right now? What are you working on right now?
I'm writing some books, and I'm creating some training programs that I'm very excited about. I'm actually working on a project with James. And so, yeah, I'm putting together material that will basically help people to model a lot of the things I've been doing. And they don't have to, by any means, do the whole thing. They could just take a few leaves from my book. And I mean, everything that James has been doing. So basically this way of living, of having freedom, essentially, where that doesn't mean you have to be constantly traveling. It just means having the option to maybe make some money online, get a secondary income, go on an extended holiday for a month or two, or anything from that all the way through to basically, I want to do whatever I want for as long as I want with whoever I want. And so I want to show people all those different steps, and wherever they want to take something from that, enable them to do so. So I just wrote a little book on how to have a phone that would enable you to basically live anywhere. Because actually, what I'm moving through is what I see as the foundations. Because if you think about it, communication is kind of our foundation, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you can't talk to somebody, if you can't talk to anybody, you really can't do anything. So that's the number one. And what's the main way that people talk to each other? Basically still the phone, or aside from face-to-face. So it becomes pretty much of an inconvenience if you do want to have a global lifestyle, that every time you change country, you have to change your cell or mobile phone number. That's really inconvenient. So what would it be like to have a one cell mobile phone number that works in any country? Well, I started putting together the system that would enable that to happen. I had a lot of the ingredients that even when I left Australia 2 years ago, that would be a combination of Skype and a couple of apps. But it wasn't until I was living in New York that I found some really cool things that would enable the whole system to work, meaning I could send text messages and have them returned. I mean, I could have a mobile phone number in any country and send and receive text messages. I mean, this is amazing. And basically, it's either free or costs, a couple of dollars. So no contract. So again, removing bills. So this little book I wrote shows you how to get rid of your bills, have no contract, live in any country, and have a phone number that works anywhere.
Live a free life without phone bills.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. And you haven't released this yet.
I've done a little soft launch, but not in any big way. So basically, there's going to be a big launch coming up, and I'm going to be making it available for a special deal, actually, for the Borderless Network.
Well, awesome. I'm very eager to find out about this. I mean, I told you when I first met you, I have right now, this was the biggest challenge I faced in moving here, was telecommunications, just the nature of my business. I wanted to be able to talk here. I wanted to be able to surf the internet here on my phone. And I needed to be able to talk to my clients and, other friends back in the United States and to be able to call them. And so I am very much anticipating this book of yours.
Yeah, because if you think about it, let's just say you are living in the US or Australia. Let's just say the US and you want to relocate. Let's say you just want to test out living in Mexico for a while because you've heard it's got nicer weather, it's cheaper and so forth. But you're bothered about upsetting your clients or even your work colleagues or maybe your family. Well, let's just say you do have the flexibility. Let's just presuppose that enables you to move. But you just give everybody your phone number. They don't even have to know what you've done. And they can keep calling you. And you don't have to even get yourself a second phone. So imagine that you keep the same phone. You might have to give them a new phone number. But if you do things right, you can say to everybody, hey, here's my new US phone number, and I'm going to be using that from now on. People take a note of that. They call you. They message you. They don't know where you are. And they can even leave voicemail. And if you happen to be in a different time zone, you just get back to them when it works. So that really enables your business life, your work life, to continue without any interruption.
Just talking about this, I think what I'll do is on the show notes, I'll add in a link where if people are interested in this book, they can enter their email and we'll get you on the list to receive updates when it should be out. I would say in the next couple months or so. Right?
Oh, definitely, very soon.
Yeah, me and Barnaby are also working on kind of a course, I guess you could call it. I have a lot of people that I've been working in kind of the location independent and helping people set up offshore things and buying assets outside of the country and this type of thing. But a lot of times people don't even know how to get started. People don't, they need a kind of a step-by-step way of, from where they are, how do they get to live this, set up have a location independent business, set it up in a way where they can lower their tax burden, live a free life like we're talking about, but they don't even know how to get started. So what we're doing now is we're putting together a course where it'll take you step by step, have all the different resources and videos and things like that. So that should be within the next couple months. We're going to be starting to launch that. So
yeah, I was really excited when I met James because I'd actually had that as an idea for a while, and then I met James and he said he had the same idea, and I was really thinking, well, yeah, let's just do this together. And so we're going to pool these resources. But one of the really cool things I think about it, what we're planning on doing, is enabling people to ask us questions. And so basically it won't just be a resource of, well, here's all this material. It's like, hey, submit your questions and we'll answer them for you. So it'll really actually literally be tailored to the people who are participating, because we're going to help them basically literally become free to whatever extent they want.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're really excited about that. So
Great. Yeah. So we're here in San Miguel de Allende. This is only the second person, I believe, that we've actually interviewed in the studio, in the house here.
I feel honored.
But it's a great time of year. Barnaby's new here. He's enjoying it. The weather's probably, maybe it's a bit colder than you'd anticipated?
Yeah, I've kind of been actively avoiding winter for these last few years, so I haven't really done that. Another reason why I left New York to come down to Mexico was it's getting pretty cold in New York.
Yeah. I grew up in northern Michigan, okay? And I was talking to a friend there just last week, and he said, do you know how funny that is? that I'm freezing my ass off. Of course, a lot of it has to do, it's beautiful right now. I mean, it's getting into the, for U.S. people, Fahrenheit, into the, mid 70s, no problem. It's just that these concrete houses really do hold the cold, especially if you don't have a lot of exposure to the sun, and my house really doesn't. So it gets surprisingly cold at night, but it's beautiful during the day and in the late afternoon. It's fantastic. So we love San Miguel. We enjoy our time here, and it is, as Barnaby indicated, it's sort of on the map. He's talked about Chiang Mai, he's talked about Bali, he's talked about New York. There are a number of places throughout the world. There are places in South America. Maybe that's where you need to go next, right?
Maybe we'll see. But I'm actually, one of the reasons why I enjoy, I actually like being settled in a place for quite a while because it enables me to get a lot of work done. So, I mean, it actually sounds all very exotic. But in truth, I actually, I have a business. Every day I go to work, I wake up in the morning and I put in a full day's work. And I enjoy doing that. And so I like actually living somewhere like San Miguel where it's very peaceful, there's good services, and I can get things done. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I feel the same way. A lot of people say, well, isn't it kind of slow there? And, at times, it's slower than, for instance, New York. But, coming from Acapulco, that's exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for a place that could, kind of keep me grounded, where I could concentrate, where I wasn't just all kinds of craziness and stuff going on. And then, if you'd like to go do that, then you can go do that, not that far drive away, or you can fly somewhere for a weekend or a week or whatever. But I kind of find that it has a good balance of, you can go in Central and there's lots of stuff to do. If you want to do that, you can go as hard partying as you want, or you can just chill out and, there's lots of good food here, and lots of nice restaurants, and it's got a good community of people. You get to know everybody pretty quickly.
And there's something going on right now. Barnaby told James and I about. What is this that's happening in the
Well, they have a writers' conference this week.
The writers' conference?
Yep, a huge writers' conference going on this week. It's an international writers' conference. They have Steinman. Deborah Steinman is one of the headliners, and a few others.
Talking about the birds.
Well, right, yeah, that's the other
what is
thing.
this?
Oh, yeah. So at the moment, there's a. It's called a murmuration. I don't know. That's what they call it, where the birds are flying in at sunset, and essentially they're hiding from, I think, eagles or hawks. They're hiding.
Is that what it is? Oh, yeah. Okay, I didn't know.
So these larger birds of prey are just flying around and trying to basically bite in the air and eat one of these cute little birds. But anyway, I went out there at 6:20 p.m. at night, just as the sunset's happening, and just a huge number of these birds. I did a video and put it up on Facebook, and it was like a show where they were forming these incredible formations of spheres and en masse of maybe even thousands of them, and they're settling into these reeds. So they're sort of swarming around in the air, making these incredible patterns, and then sort of landing in, and they just keep flying in until they all are landed into these reeds.
You know what? I'll add that video into the show notes as well. I think people really enjoy seeing that. It was about 6 minutes long at least.
Yeah,
it's kind of very good.
Kind of like meditative actually watching it.
And right at sunset too, with it
was beautiful. So I recommend doing that, guys. You should really head out, because apparently it only happens for maybe a month or two. I mean, it doesn't last.
Well, definitely go check it out. So Barnaby, how do you actually make money? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Happy to. So I was just talking about Tim Ferriss and his book and Odesk and those sort of sites. Essentially, you could kind of, I guess, call it arbitrage. So I look at, I like to make money in dollars and spend it in pesos or Thai baht. Basically, that's kind of the model. So get clients from a higher income area and get the work done in a lower income area. So I'm able to find people who've got very good skills, who live in places in Asia, in India, or Eastern Europe, Ukraine, these sort of places. And again, because my skill set is in IT, I understand what it takes to make an IT project. So basically, I get IT projects in. I get clients that are happy to pay, Western rates for those. And then I project manage it, and I hire the people, my teams, and pay them in a good, whatever they want, basically. So they just give me invoices, hourly rates, and I just say yes. And I make the spread, basically. And so I use that capital. So essentially, I'm using clients' projects to fund my own projects. My own projects are, writing these books, creating training programs like the one I'm working on with James. So essentially, it's a mix. So you can see it's a mix between working on projects where I get clients, and you could, I guess, apply that to many things. But I'd be recommending people, it really is possible to make your own income online from selling information products. I think that's one of the best things, because really, who wants to ship out boxes of whatever? I personally, I like to avoid postage. So information products are really the best type of way, the easiest way to make an income online. So then you have to make one, and that's going to take a bunch of time. And there's strategies there as well to really fast track that. I don't have time here to go into it, but there's a way to write a whole training program in a month. There's a way to do that where you basically use interviews, and there's a whole bunch there. So we'll talk more about that at another time.
Is that a book you're planning?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, part of the training program.
Okay.
But yeah, essentially you can. So why not save up $10,000, go and move to Chiang Mai? It's only going to cost you $5,000 a year to live there if you do it right. Spend 2 years and give yourself a go at running 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 internet businesses. Most of them probably will fail, but you know what? I reckon you'll hit one that'll work in 2 years. So that's a good strategy. Find somewhere like, or San Miguel. I mean, San Miguel, you could come here again. Probably you could live here for maybe $10,000 for the year if you did it right. And again, just dedicate yourself to learning this new trade. Get something happening, use market research, because the tools are all there right now. You don't have to actually even guess at any of this stuff. You don't have to think, well, I wonder what will work. The tools are all there for free to do keyword research, to pinpoint on trends, to know exactly what countries are buying what, how many people are typing in what into Google or Amazon, and you can just copy that, and then you can start selling that, and you just get better at driving traffic. I mean, it's a complete systematic scientific process, which you can nail using these incredible market research tools. And so that really gives a level playing field to anybody who's willing to dedicate themselves, the ability to start making an income. And so, yes, save up $10,000, move to San Miguel, move to Chiang Mai, whatever, spend 12 to 24 months and just get it cranking, where all you need to make is like $1,000 to $1,500 a month. Oh my God.
Right.
And you're set to live in any of these amazing places. And then once you've got one of those systems going, wouldn't you just duplicate it and do it again? I mean, once you start cranking it out, $10,000 a year, $20,000, $40,000 a year from each of these businesses combined. I mean, the thing is, it doesn't take a lot to live. You don't actually have to be a millionaire to live like a millionaire. In many ways, if you think about it, I'm living the lifestyle of a Hollywood movie star from the 50s, essentially. International travel, doing whatever I want. I'm not a millionaire, not yet, but that will happen. But basically, so that thing that we were all told for the last 50, 60 years to aspire to, and that you would have to have several $1 million to do this, is a lie. You've been lied to. It's not true. You can do all this for, not much. And because of the internet, because you can get yourself this phone number, you can live somewhere, people can email you, people can call you, you can pretend to be back at home, and you can create something. And once you've got it working, duplicate it and keep testing and refining and researching the target markets to really nail it and release things that people will want to buy. And so I know that that's a lot there, and it will take somebody who doesn't know much, quite a bit to go through, but you can really do this.
I've got about a dozen guys I'm thinking of right now who are eating up everything that you're saying right now. They're most of them still living in the States, and they so badly want to do exactly what you're talking about. I wonder if, as you say, just think about saving up $10,000 or maybe $15,000 if you can arrange something like that. And maybe the relocation itself will be just the kick in the pants you need to actually follow through and make it work.
So true. I'll just tell you a quick story about a guy I met in Chiang Mai. He was from Germany, and basically he was so eager to live this life. He was so fed up with living in the West and how expensive it was and how it was grinding him into the ground. He was only in his mid-20s. He was already at the effect of it. And he said to me, he knew about Chiang Mai. He knew how much it would cost to live there, $600 a month. That was all. He just needed to make. And so he was working in his call center, but building his online business. The moment, his first month, he made $600. He quit his job, bought a plane ticket to Chiang Mai. Can you imagine how scared he was? He was really scared because he didn't have thousands of dollars. All he had was 1 month of making $600 online. And he's like, dude, I'm going to have to make this work. And the next month, he made another $600. And he's been living there, I think, now for 2 or 3 years. And, he's not rolling in it. But every time I saw him, he was pretty happy. He always had girls around him. He was always eating great food. And he was living the lifestyle that he wanted. And he I guess all he had to do was remember what it was like back in Germany and how cold and how expensive it was. And he was like, there's no way I'm going back to that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And he wasn't even working that hard. He was mixing with all the other internet marketers, and they would share stories. They would share tips and things. And I could see he was basically moving at whatever pace he wanted to because he had the space. You see, I think it's really hard to make it living in the West, living in England or the US or Australia, because of you've got no space to think. All you're doing is paying bills and, Groundhog Day every day. So this requires a bit of creativity. So how are you going to do that? I couldn't do it. I had so many projects I was trying to get off the ground, and I was like, the only way I'm going to really make this work is by having the headspace to go and live somewhere where it's not going to be as, there's not going to be any bills or very few. So as soon as I did that, I had the headspace to really make things happen.
Yeah, I think that's funny about, places like you're talking about in the United States or the West in general. Right now, growth has been cut off for a while, as far as just economic growth and like real economic growth. If you take into account, inflation and all this type of stuff. So you have, people are losing money through inflation, losing money through higher taxes. There's not that many people that are actually making more money than they were in the past. And it's getting more and more competitive because people need, they want more money, they need more money. So it's just everybody's scratching their eyes out, and it doesn't have to be like that, So,
but it does require a leap of faith and, to be honest, a lot of guts.
Yeah.
But, I can tell you now that if you're willing to do it, you'll find a pot of gold. Mm-hmm. But it might take something to make it happen. But, it's really there. It's available for all of us.
So there's a question that we like to leave people with on the Borderless podcast, Barnaby. James, would you like to ask that?
Sure, Barnaby. So if you were talking to maybe a 20-year-old version of yourself or somebody who was thinking about doing all this, what is the best piece of advice that you could give them?
Oh, wow. Well, I think it would be something along the lines of, maybe because it's only one piece of advice, it's something about staying open and really believing that whatever you're thinking, it really is possible. You just need to read the right books and speak to the right people. But don't lose your dream, because whatever it is, you can really make it happen. And I know that's probably kind of very airy-fairy, but I mean, if that's only one little thing, like that's if they want to know the books and the people, I can tell them that too. But
yeah, well, how about you know what? Let's do that too. What are some of the top books that you would recommend?
Okay, well, I guess if they're really interested in this thing, I mean, straight off the bat is the 4-Hour Workweek. Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially what I'm doing is I'm putting together some books that are going to be pretty much like that. I just will consider them like my updated version. Mm-hmm. So go for my book, but it's not out yet. So go with Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek. And that will really give you the lay of the land of what's really possible. You will also want to read The Cash Flow Quadrant by Kiyosaki. Mm-hmm. Really, that's going to give you enough to really get yourself going. Because what you want to understand is what it's going to take to essentially have leverage in the world and essentially use, there's no other way to say this, but basically use cheaper labor to get things done. So, I mean, there's only a couple of ways to really make the money. You're either going to do it with shares, real estate, or business. And if we're talking about geographically independent business, then we're talking about the internet. So you want to find out, again, if you're asking the advice, well, you want to basically get your head around internet. You want to understand what it takes to run something online. And so Ferriss's book is going to give you an insight there. You want to start going to sites like Odesk and learning about what it takes to hire people, come up with projects. But that's going to be a big journey, but it all starts with the first step.
Very good. Well, Barnaby Andersun, Barnaby Michael Andersun. How do you spell your middle name again? I decided to leave that.
It's just
right
like Michael, but with an extra A at the beginning.
Okay. All right.
There's a story there, but let's not go there.
Brand strategist, speaker, and writer, and coming out soon, Live a Free Life Without Phone Bills. I'm eager to find out more about that. He and James are collaborating on some projects too. So thank you so much for being on the Borderless podcast with us, Barnaby.
It's been so much fun. Thanks, guys, for having me. I've really enjoyed this, and I love your studio here, and it's really great what you've put together. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was just a real pleasure talking to Barnaby Andersun, and we'd like to get your input on what he has to say. This is a guy who can really help you if you're looking to live the life of the perpetual traveler, if you'd like to internationalize, start your own location-independent business. What we'd like you to do, if you would, is go to borderlesspodcast.com, click on the Join Now button. That will get you a couple of different things, including access to our private Facebook page where you can get involved in the conversation. Also, would you please go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe. That would help us out, and more people will find us that way. Thanks very much. Another Borderless podcast coming up next week.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.